The Great Chamber of the Galaxy Council was the largest structure ever built by any species. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, a monument to cooperation and peace among the stars. Representatives from 12 different alien civilizations gathered here to decide the fate of billions. And for 3 long years, humanity had been begging for a seat at the table. Ambassador Daniel Morrison stood at the lower platform, one reserved for observer species. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his entire career working toward this moment, believing that humanity could find its place among the stars through patience and diplomacy. Now, watching the council members look down at him from their elevated positions, he felt that belief crumbling like sand. High Speaker Thalax of the Valari stood at the center of the chamber. His body was made of living crystal, shifting colors with his emotions. The Valari were the oldest species in the known galaxy, and they never let anyone forget it. They had welcomed humanity into the galactic community 50 years ago, but that welcome had always come with conditions. The matter of the Kepler system has been decided, Thalax announced, his voice ringing through the chamber like struck glass. The human colony there will be placed under joint administration with the Valari Dominion. This is for their own protection, as humans have not yet demonstrated the ability to manage frontier territories. Daniel felt his hands tighten into fists at his sides. The Kepler colony had been built by human hands, with human resources, on a world that no other species had wanted. 40,000 people lived there. And now they were being told that strangers would govern them. Lisa Patterson, his aide, touched his arm gently. She was younger than him, with dark skin and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Sir, maybe we should request a recess. Talk to them privately. We have talked privately, Daniel said quietly. For 3 years, we have talked. They do not listen because they do not believe we matter. He stepped forward, and the chamber fell silent. Observer species were not supposed to speak unless spoken to. That was one of the many rules humanity had been expected to follow without question. High Speaker, Daniel said, his voice steady despite the anger burning in his chest. I must formally object to this decision. The Kepler colony was established under the Settlement Rights Protocol, which grants founding species full sovereignty over their territories. The Lox's crystalline form flickered with what might have been amusement. Ambassador Morrison, the Settlement Rights Protocol applies to full member species. Humanity remains in observer status. Surely you understand the difference. I understand that we have been in observer status for 50 years, Daniel replied. I understand that every time we request full membership, we are told to wait, to prove ourselves, to demonstrate that we are ready. How long must we prove ourselves, High Speaker? Another 50 years? 100? 1,000? These things take time, said Counselor Yamara of the Drethi. She was a being of flowing water, contained within a transparent suit, her voice bubbling through translation devices. Unlike Thalax, she seemed genuinely sympathetic. The galaxy has existed for billions of years. Humanity has been traveling the stars for less than a century. Patience is required. Patience, Daniel repeated. We have been patient. When the Meridian Plague struck the outer colonies, human doctors worked alongside your medical teams for 5 years to find a cure. When the trade routes through the Argos Nebula collapsed, human engineers rebuilt them. When the Cynthian Collective faced a cascading systems failure, human programmers helped restore their networks. Each time, we were told that these contributions would be recognized. Each time, nothing changed. He looked around the chamber at the 12 species that held power over half the galaxy. Some avoided his gaze. Others stared with open contempt. A few, like Yamara, watched with something that might have been shame. 3 years ago, I came to this chamber with hope, Daniel continued. I believed that if we showed good faith, if we contributed without asking for anything in return, we would earn your respect. I was wrong. You do not respect us. You tolerate us. You use us when it is convenient and dismiss us when it is not. You speak of us as children who do not know their place, even as you benefit from everything we offer. Ambassador, you forget yourself, Thalax said, and now there was cold warning in his voice. Humanity exists in this galaxy by our permission. We could have ignored your species when you first reached the stars. We chose to welcome you instead. Gratitude would be more appropriate than complaints. Something changed in Daniel's expression. The anger was still there, but now it was joined by something else. Acceptance. Resolution. The look of a man who had finally stopped, hoping for something that would never come. Human delegation withdraws from these proceedings, he announced. Effective immediately and indefinitely. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the environmental systems seemed to hold their breath. You cannot simply leave, Thalok said, and for the first time there was uncertainty in his voice. The compact of 12 binds all species that participate in galactic affairs. We never signed the compact, Daniel replied. We were never allowed to. Observer species do not have that privilege, remember? We attended your meetings as guests, and now we are choosing to stop attending. There is no law that prevents us from doing so. I checked. He turned toward the exit, and his delegation fell into step behind him. Lisa walked at his side, her face carefully neutral despite the chaos erupting around them. Ambassador Morrison, Yamara called out, her watery form pressing against her containment suit. Please, let us discuss this. There may be a path forward that satisfies everyone. Daniel paused at the great doors of the chamber. He looked back at the council, at the species that had shaped the galaxy for millions of years, at the beings who had never once seen humanity as anything more than a temporary inconvenience. You have my communication codes, he said. When you are ready to treat us as equals, you know how to reach us. Until then, humanity will find its own path. We have done it before. We will do it again. He walked through the doors, and they closed behind him with a sound like a tomb ceiling shut in the chamber. The council members turned to each other with confusion and anger. This was not supposed to happen. Lesser species did not simply walk away from the Galaxy Council. It was unthinkable, unprecedented. Let them go, the Lox declared, his form blazing with indignation. They will return within a month, begging for readmission. Humanity cannot survive without us. They are too young, too weak, too limited. When their pride fades and reality sets in, they will come back, and they will be more cooperative than ever. Most of the council members nodded in agreement. Only Yamara remained still, watching the closed doors with an expression that might have been worry. She remembered something a human diplomat had once told her. Years ago, humans, he had said, were a species that had crawled out of the mud and taught themselves to reach the stars. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed them. They were not a species that surrendered. Icily, she wondered if the council truly understood what they had just done. She suspected they did not. The first month after humanity's withdrawal passed without incident. The Galaxy Council continued its work, passing resolutions and settling disputes as it had for thousands of years. High Speaker Thalax made speeches about the importance of unity and the dangers of isolation. He assured the other species that the human tantrum would end soon. The second month came and went. Human ships stopped appearing at major trading posts. The merchants who had once filled the markets with strange and wonderful goods from Earth simply vanished. At first, no one noticed. Humans were a small presence in galactic trade, barely worth mentioning in the official reports. By the third month, the notices started arriving. Counselor Yamara received the first one at her offices on the Drethi homeworld. It was a simple message from the Human Medical Cooperative, informing her that all shipments of pharmaceutical compounds would cease immediately. There was no anger in the message, no demands or threats, just a polite notification that their business relationship had ended. She stared at the message for a long time, her liquid form churning with concern. Then she began making calls. The picture that emerged was deeply troubling. Human medicine was not just a convenience. It was a necessity. The unique biochemistry of Earth had produced compounds that no other world could replicate. These compounds treated diseases that affected 17 different species across the galaxy. Without them, millions would suffer. Some would die. Yamara brought her findings to the council, expecting alarm and immediate action. Instead, she found dismissal. The humans are bluffing, said Representative Korvax of the Scythian Collective. He was an artificial being, a network of machines that had achieved consciousness long before humanity existed. His voice came from a floating sphere that served as his physical presence. They will not truly abandon their trading partners. The economic damage to their own species would be too severe. They are not bluffing, Jamara insisted. I have confirmed the shipments have stopped. Hospitals across 7 systems are reporting shortages. Within 6 months, we will face a medical crisis. Then we will synthesize the compounds ourselves, Thalok said dismissively. Human chemistry cannot be so complex that our scientists cannot replicate it. Our scientists have been trying to replicate it for 200 years, Yamara replied. Earth's ecosystem is unique in all the known galaxy. The compounds it produces cannot be manufactured artificially. We have tried everything. Council chamber fell quiet. For the first time since the withdrawal, a hint of uncertainty crept into the assembled representatives. 6 months later, that uncertainty had grown into fear. The medical shortages were just the beginning. Human engineers had designed the water purification systems used on 40 different worlds. Systems so efficient that no other species had bothered to develop alternatives. When the maintenance contracts ended and the spare parts stopped coming, those systems began to fail. Human agricultural specialists had taught dozens of colonies how to grow food in harsh environments. Without their guidance and their specially designed seeds, crop yields plummeted. Food prices rose. People began to go hungry. Human navigators had mapped the safest routes through the most dangerous regions of space. Their charts and algorithms were licensed to shipping companies across the galaxy. When those licenses expired and were not renewed, ships began taking longer routes or risking the dangers. Some did not arrive at all. And then there was the culture. No one had realized how deeply human art and music and stories had woven themselves into galactic civilization. Human films played in theaters on 100 worlds. Human songs filled the airways. Human books were translated into every known language. When the entertainment networks lost access to their human content, audiences complained. When replacements failed to satisfy them, they complained louder. Administrator Korvax reported that cultural exchange revenue had dropped by 31% across affected sectors. The Scythian Collective, beings of pure logic, found themselves unable to explain why so many organic species were so attached to human creative works. They only knew that the attachment was real and its absence was causing genuine distress. 1 year after the withdrawal, the council convened an emergency session. The great chamber was filled with worried representatives, their usual confidence replaced by something closer to panic. This cannot continue, said Speaker Naleth, of the Corvin hegemony. His species resembled large insects, with multiple limbs and compound eyes that reflected the chamber lights. Our people are asking questions. They want to know why human goods are no longer available. They want to know why their favorite entertainment programs have stopped. They want to know what the council is doing about it. Situation is temporary, Thalix insisted. Though his crystalline form had dimmed noticeably since the withdrawal began, humanity will return to the table. They cannot possibly sustain themselves without access to galactic resources. Can they not? Yamara asked quietly. Their homeworld is resource. Their technology is advancing rapidly. Every report suggests that they are not suffering from the separation nearly as much as we are. It's impossible. They are too young, too primitive. Primitive species do not develop faster than light travel in less than a century, Korvax observed. Primitive species do not cure diseases that have plagued other civilizations for millennia. I believe we may have misjudged the humans significantly. The admission hung in the air like a physical weight. Korvax was known for his precise analysis and complete lack of emotion. If he believed they had made an error, the error was almost certainly real. What do you suggest? Nalith asked. That we simply give them what they want? Full membership. Equal voting rights? Do you understand what that would mean? A species that has existed for barely 100,000 years would have the same standing as civilizations millions of years old. I suggest, Korvax replied, that we consider whether our current approach is sustainable. The data indicates it is not. The Lox's form blazed with sudden fury. I will not be lectured about sustainability by a machine. Humanity is a minor species throwing a tantrum. They will exhaust themselves soon enough, and when they do, they will come crawling back. We simply need to wait. The vote that followed was close, closer than anyone expected. In the end, the council chose to maintain its position. They would not reach out to humanity. They would not offer concessions. They would wait for the humans to break. Jamara voted against the decision. So did Korvax. So did 3 others. It was not enough. As the session ended and the representatives departed, Yamara found herself standing alone in the great chamber. She thought about the human ambassador, Daniel Morrison, and the look in his eyes when he walked out those doors. She had seen anger there, yes, but she had also seen something else: resolve, determination, the quiet certainty of someone who had made a decision and would not waver from it. She wondered how long the council could afford to wait. She wondered if they understood that every day of waiting made their position weaker. She wondered if pride would destroy them all before wisdom could save them. Outside the great chamber, the stars continued their endless dance. And somewhere among them, humanity was watching, waiting, building something new. The silence stretched on. The plague came without warning. It struck the Valari colony of Meridian Prime in the middle of their harvest season, spreading through the crystalline population like fire through dry grass. Within 2 weeks, 10,000 Valari had fallen ill. Within a month, the first deaths began. High Speaker Thalix received the reports in his private chambers, watching the numbers climb with growing horror. The Valeri were not supposed to get sick. Their crystalline bodies were resistant to almost every known disease. Their immune systems were considered the strongest in the galaxy. And yet, his people were dying. And no one could explain why. The best medical minds of the Valari Dominion worked day and night to find a cure. They analyzed the plague from every angle, tested every treatment they could devise, and failed again and again. The disease was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It attacked the crystalline matrix at a molecular level, causing the bodies of its victims to slowly crumble into dust. After 3 months of failure, a junior researcher made a discovery. The plague shared certain characteristics with a family of diseases that had been successfully treated before. The treatments had been developed on Earth. Thalix stared at the report for a long time. Then he ordered his personal ship prepared for departure. The journey to the border of human space took 6 days. Thalix spent most of that time in meditation, trying to prepare himself for what he was about to do. He had spent his entire life believing in the superiority of the elder races. He had dismissed humanity as children, as primitives, as beings unworthy of respect. Now he was traveling to beg those same beings for help. The human patrol ship that intercepted him was small and unimpressive by galactic standards. Its design was functional rather than elegant, built for efficiency rather than display. The name painted on its hull read Starward Hope. Captain Samuel Green appeared on the communication screen. He was a middle-aged man with a weathered face and calm eyes. He wore a simple uniform without decorations or symbols of rank. Everything about him suggested practicality and competence. "Hi, Speaker Thalix," Samuel said. His tone was polite but distant. "You are in restricted human space. Please state the purpose of your visit." Thalix had practiced this speech during the journey. He had prepared careful words that would convey his request without sacrificing too much dignity. But standing before this human, those words seemed hollow and false. He found himself speaking plainly instead. "My people are dying," he said. "A plague is spreading through our colonies. Our medicine cannot stop it. We believe human science may hold the answer." Samuel's expression did not change. "I see, and you came here personally to make this request." "Yes. 3 years ago, you told our ambassador that human medical science was primitive and unworthy of serious consideration. You said our contributions to galactic knowledge were insignificant. You compared our doctors to children playing with toys they did not understand." Thalix felt his crystalline form dim with shame. He remembered those words. He had meant them when he spoke them. "I was wrong," he said. The admission cost him more than he had expected. "Yes," Samuel agreed. "You were." Silence stretched between them. Thalax waited for the human to continue, to make demands, to extract concessions while he was in a position of weakness. It was what any sensible negotiator would do. It was what Thalax himself would have done. Instead, Samuel simply looked at him with those calm, patient eyes. "Your request will be forwarded to Earth Command," Samuel said finally. "They will make the decision about whether to provide assistance. I cannot promise any particular outcome." "I understand. Is there anything I can do to improve our chances? Any gesture that might demonstrate our sincerity?" Samuel considered the question. "When Ambassador Morrison walked out of your council chamber, he said something. He said that when you were ready to treat us as equals, you knew how to reach us. Are you ready for that, High Speaker? Not because you need something from us, but because you genuinely believe we deserve it." It was a fair question. It was also a difficult one. Thalax thought about his people dying on Meridian Prime. He thought about the coup. And still clinging to their pride while the galaxy crumbled around them. He thought about 50 years of humanity trying to earn a place that should have been freely given. "I do not know," he admitted. "I have believed certain things for a very long time. Changing those beliefs is not easy. But I am willing to try. I am willing to learn. If that is not enough, I understand." Samuel nodded slowly. "That is more honest than I expected. I appreciate it." He turned to speak with someone off-screen. Thalax could hear voices, but could not make out the words. When Samuel turned back, his expression had softened slightly. "A medical team is being dispatched to Meridian Prime," he said. "They will arrive within 2 weeks. They will do everything they can to help your people." Relief flooded through Thalax, so powerful that his crystalline form blazed with sudden light. "Thank you. I am in your debt. The Valari Dominion is in your debt." "We are not doing this to put you in debt," Samuel replied. "We are doing it because people are dying and we can help. That is what humans do. We help when we can, even when we have been given every reason not to." He leaned forward slightly, and his voice grew more serious. "But understand something, High Speaker. This does not change the situation between our peoples. We will save your people because it is right. We will not return to the Council because of gratitude or obligation. If you want us back, you will need to earn it. Not through a single request or a single gesture, but through genuine change. Through treating us as the equals we have always been." "How do I convince the Council?" Thalax asked. "Many of them still believe as I once did." "That is not my problem to solve," Samuel said. "But I will tell you what I have observed about your Council. You have spent so long looking down on younger species that you have forgotten how to look at them at all. You see what you expect to see instead of what is actually there. If you want to change, start by opening your eyes." The communication ended. Thalax sat alone in his ship, staring at the stars beyond his viewport. Somewhere out there, human doctors were preparing to travel across the galaxy to save people who had treated them with nothing but contempt. He thought about what Samuel had said, about opening his eyes, about seeing what was actually there, for the first time in his very long life. High Speaker Thalax began to wonder if everything he believed might be wrong. The journey home was longer than the journey out. Not in distance or time, but in the weight of thought that accompanied it. By the time Thalax reached Valari space, he had made a decision. The Council would listen to him. They would listen because they had no choice. And when they listened, he would tell them the truth. Humanity was not a minor species to be tolerated and controlled. Humanity was a force that could shape the galaxy, and the Council had been blind to it for far too long. It was time to open their eyes. The emergency session of the Galaxy Council was the largest gathering in 300 years. Every major species sent their highest representatives. The Great Chamber was filled to capacity, with observers crowding the upper galleries and transmission drones. It's broadcasting to 100 worlds. High Speaker Thalax stood at the central platform, his crystalline form restored to full brightness after the successful treatment of the Meridian Prime Plague. The human medical team had worked miracles. They had identified the disease, developed a treatment, and saved 30,000 lives in less than a month. And they had done it without asking for anything in return. The Council had not taken the news well. "You went to the humans without authorization," Speaker Natha of the Corvin hegemony accused. His compound eyes glittered with barely contained fury. You begged them for help like a supplicant before a throne. You have embarrassed the entire council. I saved my people, Thalox replied calmly. I would do it again. At what cost? Now they know we need them. They will use that knowledge against us. They already knew we needed them. They have known for years. They simply waited for us to admit it. Counselor Yamara rose from her position. Her liquid form pressed against the walls of her containment suit, rippling with emotion. If I may speak, I have prepared a comprehensive report on humanity's contributions to galactic civilization. I believe the Council needs to hear it. We have heard enough about human contributions, Nalith said dismissively. They are a minor species with a talent for self-promotion. Nothing more? Then you will not mind if I present the facts, Jamara replied. Unless the Council is afraid of facts. The challenge hung in the air. Nalith clicked his mandibles in frustration, but did not object. Yamara activated the display systems, and data began flowing across the chamber walls. Human engineers designed the water purification systems currently in use on 47 worlds, she began. These systems serve a combined population of 12 billion beings. Without regular maintenance and replacement parts, which have been unavailable since the withdrawal, 31 of these systems have begun to fail. 6 have failed completely. The populations they served are now facing water shortages. She'll let that sink in before. Continuing, human agricultural techniques are responsible for 23% of all food production in the outer colonies. Human navigation algorithms guide 61% of all commercial shipping through dangerous space. Human entertainment content represents 43% of all media consumption across the galaxy. Human medical compounds treat diseases affecting 17 different species. The numbers continued, each one adding to the weight of evidence. By the time Yamara finished, even Nalith had fallen silent. We did not notice these contributions because we did not want to notice them, Yamara concluded. We told ourselves that humans were primitive, that their achievements were minor, that we could easily replace anything they provided. We were wrong. We were catastrophically, embarrassingly, dangerously wrong. Administrator Korvac spoke next. His mechanical voice carried no emotion, but his words were devastating nonetheless. I have run projections based on current trends. If humanity remains withdrawn from galactic affairs, we face systemic collapse in multiple sectors within 5 years. Within 10 years, the economic damage will be irreversible. Within 20 years, the Galaxy Council as we know it will cease to function. Impossible, someone shouted from the upper galleries. One species cannot be that important. One species is not that important, Korvax agreed. But humanity is not simply one species. They are a bridge. They connect systems that would otherwise be isolated. They solve problems that other species cannot solve. They create things that other species cannot create. Their removal has exposed how dependent we have become on that bridge. Alex stepped forward again. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the chamber. I spent 3 days on a human patrol ship, while their medical team traveled to Meridian Prime. I watched them work. I spoke with their captain. I learned things that I should have learned 50 years ago. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Humans do not think like us. They do not measure time in centuries or millennia. They measure it in years, in months, in days. Every moment matters to them because they have so few moments. And because every moment matters, they refuse to waste any of them on hatred or pride or grudges. They saved my people not because we deserved it, but because they could. Because helping others is simply what they do. They did not ask for payment or concessions or recognition. They asked only for one thing: respect. The chamber was utterly silent. We have not given them respect, Thalox continued. We have given them tolerance at best and contempt at worst. We have taken everything they offered and given nothing in return except criticism and condescension. And when they finally had enough, when they finally walked away from our table, we told ourselves that they were the problem, that they were too proud, too sensitive, too young to understand how things worked. His crystalline form flared with something that might have been shame. We were fools. And now we must decide whether we will continue being fools until our civilization crumbles, or whether we will finally admit our mistakes and try to make them right. The vote that followed was not unanimous. Nalith and several others refused to support any concession to humanity. But for the first time in galactic history, a clear majority of the council voted to admit wrongdoing. They drafted a new proposal over the following week: full membership for humanity, with complete voting rights and equal standing, recognition of all human territorial claims, including the Kepler colony, a formal apology from the council to be delivered personally by the High Speaker, and an invitation to return to the table not as observers or supplicants, but as partners. The message was sent to Earth with every diplomatic courtesy the council could muster. Then they waited. Daniel Morrison's response arrived 3 days later. It was brief and carefully worded. The people of Earth have received your proposal. We appreciate the gesture, and we recognize the difficulty of what you have done. However, words are easy. Change is hard. Before we consider returning, we need to see evidence that this change is real. Show us through your actions, not just your statements. When you have done so, we will talk. Some council members were outraged by the response. They had humbled themselves, admitted fault, offered everything humanity had asked for. What more could possibly be required? But Thalax understood. He thought about what the human captain had told him. About opening his eyes, about seeing what was actually there. Humanity had been burned too many times to trust words alone. They needed proof. They needed to see that the council had truly changed, that this was not simply a temporary adjustment to be reversed once the crisis passed. Then we will show them, Thalak said. We will show them through our actions, however long it takes. The work began immediately. The council started reviewing decades of decisions that had disadvantaged younger species. They reformed their voting procedures to give more voice to smaller civilizations. They established new protocols for cultural exchange and scientific cooperation. It was slow, difficult work. Many resisted. Old habits died hard, and ancient prejudices even harder. But piece by piece, the council began to change, and somewhere among the stars, humanity was watching, waiting, judging not by words, but by deeds. The galaxy held its breath. 2 years had passed since humanity's withdrawal. 2 years of crisis and change and slow, painful growth for the Galaxy Council. And now, at last, the day of reckoning had arrived. The delegation that traveled to Earth was the largest in galactic history. Every major species sent representatives, not subordinates or proxies, but leaders. High Speaker Thalax made the journey himself. Despite the objections of his advisors who warned that such a gesture might appear desperate, he told them that was exactly the point. They arrived in Earth orbit on a clear spring morning. The planet below was a swirl of blue and green and white, beautiful in its simplicity. Human ships surrounded them immediately, not with weapons raised, but with escort formations that guided them toward. The surface, the meeting place they had been given, was not what any of them expected. They had anticipated a formal diplomatic hall, perhaps the great chambers of the United Nations or some grand government building. Instead, they were directed to a garden in the countryside of a nation called Japan. Daniel Morrison was waiting for them there. He looked older than Thalax remembered, with more gray in his hair and deeper lines around his eyes. But his posture was straight and his gaze was clear. Lisa Patterson stood beside him, along with a small group of other humans who represented various aspects of their civilization. The garden itself was a masterpiece of controlled beauty. Water flowed through channels of polished stone. Trees that had been shaped over centuries created canopies of living art. Flowers bloomed in carefully, arranged patterns that seemed wild and natural despite their precision. This garden is 600 years old, Daniel explained as the delegation entered. It was created during a time of great conflict in our history. The person who built it wanted to show that beauty could exist even in the darkest times. That peace was possible if people were willing to work for it. Deluxe looked around at the garden, at the humans going about their daily lives beyond its walls, at the children playing in a nearby field. Everything was so different from the grand chambers of the council, so small and simple and alive. You could have demanded this meeting take place anywhere, Thalix said. You could have made us come to a fortress or a military installation. You could have demonstrated your power. Instead, you brought us to a garden. Power was never the point, Daniel replied. That is what you never understood about us. They walked together through the garden paths, the delegation spreading out behind them. Some of the representatives seemed uncomfortable in the open air, unused to natural environments. Others stared at everything with undisguised wonder, seeing humanity's homeworld for the first time. We received your reforms, Daniel continued. We monitored the changes in the council over the past 2 years. The voting, restructuring, the new protocols for younger species, the cultural initiatives. We noticed all of it. Was it enough? Thalix asked. It was a start. A genuine start, which is more than we expected. They reached a small bridge over a stream. Below, colorful fish swam in lazy circles. Daniel stopped there, leaning against the railing. When I walked out of the council chamber 3 years ago, I was angry, he admitted. 50 years of trying to earn a place that should have been freely given. 50 years of being told we were too young, too primitive, too emotional. I wanted to show you what you would lose without us. I wanted you to suffer as we had suffered. Thalix said nothing. There was nothing to say. But that is not who we are, Daniel continued. We are not a species that builds itself up by tearing others down. We withdrew not to punish you, but to protect ourselves. To give ourselves room to grow without constantly fighting for basic respect. And have you grown? Yumera asked. She had drifted closer during the conversation, her liquid form pressed against her containment suit. Daniel smiled. It was the first genuine smile any of them had seen from him. We have built 3 new colonies, developed for new medical treatments, created technologies that your scientists said were impossible. We have done more in 3 years of independence than we did in 50 years of begging for scraps from your table. Then why consider returning at all? Neleth demanded. The Corvin representative had been sullen throughout the visit, clearly uncomfortable with the entire proceeding. If you are doing so well alone, why not remain alone? Because we are not alone, Daniel replied. We never were. The galaxy is vast, and there is room for everyone. We withdrew from the council, but we never withdrew from the idea of cooperation. We still traded with those who would trade fairly with us. We still helped those who needed help. We simply refused to do it on terms that diminished us. Turned to face the assembled delegation. All the representatives of species that had spent centuries looking down on humanity. We do not want to conquer you. We do not want to dominate you. We do not want revenge or tribute or submission. We want what we have always wanted since the first human looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. What is that? Thalix asked. Connection, Daniel said simply. Partnership. The chance to learn from each other and grow together. To face the universe not as rivals competing for dominance, but as allies exploring the infinite together. A child ran past them, chasing a ball across the grass. She stopped when she saw the strange beings gathered on the bridge, her eyes wide with curiosity rather than fear. One of the adults called to her, and she ran off again, laughing. Humanity's greatest strength is not our science or our medicine or our art, Daniel said, watching the child disappear around a corner. It is our ability to hope, to believe that tomorrow can be better than today, to trust that strangers can become friends if given the chance. He looked at Thalix, at the crystalline being who had once dismissed humanity as children playing at civilization. We are ready to return, but we need to know that you are ready to receive us. Not as junior partners or probationary members or guests to be tolerated. As equals, as fellow travelers on a very long journey, Thalix moved forward. He extended one crystalline limb in the human gesture he had spent weeks practicing. Daniel took it without hesitation, his warm flesh meeting cool crystal. I believe, Thalix said slowly, that we have much to learn from each other. We always did, Daniel replied. We were just waiting for you to realize it. The sun began to set over the garden, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson and purple. The representatives of 12 species stood together on a small bridge in a 600-year-old garden, watching the light change. Jamara spoke softly. "What happens now?" Daniel released the Lox's limb and turned to watch the sunset. "Now we talk. Not as supplicants and superiors, not as observers and members, but as equals. We will have disagreements. We will have conflicts. We will frustrate each other and disappoint each other and test each other's patience. That is what families do. Families." Naleth's translator had trouble with the word. Groups of beings who are bound together not by power or convenience, but by choice. By a shared commitment to each other's well-being. By love, however imperfect or complicated that love might be. The last light of the sun touched the garden, making everything glow with golden warmth. Tomorrow, the formal negotiations would begin. Tomorrow, there would be discussions and debates and difficult decisions. Tomorrow, the hard work of building a new relationship would start. But tonight, for just a moment, the galaxy paused. The oldest civilizations in known space stood beside the youngest. The powerful and the humble, the ancient and the new, all watching the same sunset on a small planet that had somehow changed everything. High Speaker Thalax thought about all the years he had spent believing in the natural order of things. The elder species guiding, the younger species following. He thought about how certain he had been, and how wrong. Humanity had not earned their place among the stars by becoming what the Council expected them to be. They had earned it by being exactly what they were. Small and brief and burning with a fire that longer lived, species had forgotten how to feel. The Council had finally learned to see it. And in seeing it, they had changed. The sunset faded into twilight. Stars began to appear in the darkening sky. And somewhere among them, the galaxy waited to see what would happen next. For the first time, in a very long time, it waited with hope. The withdrawal was over. The silence was ended, and the understanding, at last, had begun.